Today, I messed up by falling for a fake job scam and losing $3,000 out of my banking account. And now I feel so embarrassed and angry and incredibly frustrated. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I want to start this off by saying that this happened 2 weeks ago. I got laid off from a job in the middle of September, and I have been struggling to find work. I've got my resume revamped and been working with career coaches, but nothing seems to be helping with it. After my final resume was returned to me, I began sending off applications, and within a day or two, I got an email that a company wanted to interview me for a possible remote position. And when I saw this, I was so excited. I was so happy that the service worked with the career coaches and that all I needed to do was buff up my resume. For the past 5 years, I've had an hour commute each way and then another 3 years of doing 45 minutes before that. Remote work at this point sounded like a dream come true. A few days later, they send me an interview packet. It's a questionnaire in lieu of a panel interview. A little strange, but not unheard of. All the questions were legit questions, and the technical ones were very technical. Some companies understand that asking someone to come up with the optimal solution right on the spot and under pressure makes them miss out on good candidates that are just awkward in those situations. This was a mathematician role, so it goes doubly true. I spent the next day working on the interview packet and forwarding drafts to my career coach to make sure that I wasn't sabotaging myself by being too honest, as I'm not a great salesman and I'm open about things I struggle with, instead of claiming I was some kind of amazing employee. The coach said everything checked out and that after a few revisions, I had a pretty good interview packet, so I proceeded to send it off. Well, a few days later, I get the congratulations email and I'm ecstatic. I finally have a job doing something I like and I get to do it in my pajamas. I accept the offer, and the next day they send me the offer letter and ask me to sign. I review the contract closely as I'm a paranoid person, and so far it seemed a little bit strange that I haven't talked to anybody on the phone. The contract has all the right logos and address, the pay is well within the range of the job, and everything passes my personal checks. So I sign the document and I send it back. The next day, they send me a check for $5,000 for work equipment, and my boss gets in contact with me to set up my training and explaining the day-to-day process to me and getting a feel for where my coding skills are currently at. And again, this is not out of the ordinary. I've had jobs that have sent me checks before for relocation and equipment, but just because I'm paranoid, I do some due diligence. And boy, do I wish I had done that sooner. The domain name for the email address of the HR person looks legit. No tricky characters or misspelled letters. The person I'm emailing is the actual HR person at this company, and my boss is an actual manager at the company as well. The check has the right watermark and addresses on it. It is signed by the actual CEO of the company. I mean, everything is checking out. My boss tells me I need to use their vendor to order the computer, as well as anything else that might come along with the computer. The first blatant red flag popped up here for me, but the vendor site looked legit, and it was a 10% discount off of MSRP for the equipment that they wanted me to have. So I sent $2,000 to the vendor. The order goes through, and I breathe a bit easier now, comfortably believing I have a job, and that this is not a scam, which is where they wanted me. I'm buttered up and my brain is smoothed out. The location of the company was Eastern time zone, and I live in Mountain time. So the next morning, I woke up at the respectable unemployed hour of 10 o'clock in the morning to a series of text messages and emails from 7 o'clock in the morning saying that they're trying to get a hold of me and they need me to send $1,000 to the vendor for some additional equipment. Now, if you've ever been desperately unemployed, then you know that occasionally you do some dumb stuff in hopes of a job. You know, stuff like accepting lower pay, taking something that you're overqualified for, or in my case, worried that they're going to fire me before I even get started. So half asleep, I send another $1,000, but my idiot self can tell something is up now. A couple of hours later, they try to get me to send more money, and I tell them that I hit my card limit for the day and I couldn't spend any more. So they then asked me to do something that I honestly never expected. They asked me to go to a Bitcoin ATM just so I could send them Bitcoin. At that point, my heart sank, and I realized that not only was I getting scammed, but that I was also out $3,000, which is money I need to survive as an unemployed person. I start reviewing everything and notice that I've literally been strung along this entire time as if I'm in the game BioShock. As I scroll through the messages, the amount of times they strung me along suddenly leapt out to me. I mean, how could I be so stupid? I decided to keep these guys going for a while instead of immediately calling them out. I figured if they're wasting time on me, then they can't use it on someone else. Meanwhile, I went on LinkedIn and found the cybersecurity manager and hit him up asking him what's going on. I end up talking to one of the managers that confirmed that it was indeed a scam, that I had a real check that belonged to the company, and that all the documents were real, but it just wasn't real for me. I then call up my bank and I'm filing for fraud and making a police report. Obviously, there isn't much they can do for me, but there's always a chance that a scam this elaborate could be undone by them not using spoof numbers. As we come to a close of my lengthy tale, I do have some relatively good news. I have gotten back the $1,000 I sent out. I have no idea what happened to the other $2,000, and I'm definitely not holding my breath, but it's something. If you've ever been scammed before, I can now tell you that it is one of the worst feelings. You feel dumb, embarrassed, angry, and ashamed. You feel afraid and so many other emotions. I've always said that everybody is vulnerable to at least one scam, and you know what? I finally found mine. I'm lucky to have a supportive wife who hasn't yelled at me yet somehow about being dumb, and at least I can talk to my dad about how much this sucks. So the moral of the story is that everybody is vulnerable, and if you're shaking your head right now saying, no, that could never happen to me, well, guess what? This especially could happen to you. So it's better for you to stay safe and stay smart so that you don't fall for scams in the way that I did. Wow, what a crazy situation. If I lost $2,000 just like that, I think I would lose my mind. Like, first of all, the fact that they're scamming people who are looking for jobs, that is such a disturbing thing to do to somebody, and it's honestly just so unfair. Because then you run into people like the original poster, where they are literally desperate for a job. They're trying their best to stay afloat and not miss out on all the money they could be earning. They only have a couple $1,000s to their name, and they are literally just trying to make ends meet. So when they think they have this big job and they're doing exactly what these people say, it can be very easy to fall for this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm pretty sure if I was in this original poster's shoes, I might have fallen for this too. I really think it can happen to anybody if you're not careful. So sure, this is a mess up to a degree, but at least now you know exactly what to look out for in the future. But it honestly just really sucks that you had to learn this the hard way. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled military veteran demands that we stay behind for a special event, claiming that he is more than qualified to take care of this hyperactive 7-year-old kid. So we decide to maliciously comply and literally watch this man fall apart at the seams, unable to control this child who was clearly never going to listen. Here's what happened. So this happened years ago with myself, a friend, my then boyfriend, and his daughter. We couldn't do much for toys for this particular Christmas, but our family was nominated for an event called Shop with a Veteran. It's where kids go to a Walmart with a veteran and can pick out their own Christmas gifts with a set amount of money donated by civilians and other veterans. The thing is, only the veteran can go in with them. I had later found out it was because some parents had earlier tried to persuade their kids to get things that were more catered to parents or another child instead of the child who was nominated. I can definitely understand the rule being enforced for this, but some children should have their parent with them pretty much regardless. My boyfriend's daughter was diagnosed with severe ADHD and had taken her medication, but she had gotten very excited when she found out about going to get Christmas gifts of her choosing. We found the lady hosting and explained to her about the daughter's ADHD and how she can be a whirlwind when she gets excited, and how she doesn't like to listen to people she doesn't know. When we explained to the lady hosting the event that one of us really should go in with his daughter just to make sure she behaved, she understood and talked to the veteran who was going to shop with the daughter. We immediately argued, claiming he was tired of parents wanting to pressure their kids to getting things they didn't want, and he wanted the daughter to have a good time picking out her gift. The lady tried to explain the situation, but the veteran wouldn't hear any of it. I clearly remember him grumbling at us. He said to us, "I've been to war, I can handle a kid." So I thought to myself, okay, you're gonna get exactly what you want. After the veteran took the daughter into the store, we saw two friends going in, and we didn't know that they would be there, but we were happy to see them nonetheless. Well, my boyfriend caught up with them and asked one of them if they could keep an eye on the daughter and the veteran. My boyfriend then emphasized that the veteran clearly thought he could handle his daughter, so they should just let him handle her. We waited for about an hour when the veteran returned with the daughter. She was grinning ear to ear with all the presents that she was able to get, and the veteran looked exhausted and like he had been through an absolute nightmare and back. He then yelled at us that the daughter was the most disrespectful brat he had ever met, how she just had to touch all the toys and threw everything she wanted into the shopping cart, and she was a nightmare when he told her she couldn't have everything she picked out. Well, my boyfriend packed packed his daughter's gifts in the car and then took her back inside to start our grocery shopping. We couldn't do it while she was in there with a veteran because we had to wait outside for when they were done, so we could immediately take her and her gifts, which is understandable. They weren't babysitters after all. I decided to talk to the veteran and told my boyfriend that I'd meet him inside. I asked him if he was okay, and he said that he was fine, but then asked us why didn't we tell him that our daughter was crazy. I promptly corrected him by saying that she was not crazy. I explained her ADHD to him and how we only wanted to go in with them so that she would behave. We know that she knows to behave around us, at school, and at grandma's house. We explained how she doesn't like to listen to strangers, even if we know them and she doesn't. I apologized and told him that not all parents want to go in to use this as some kind of excuse to get their own gifts. Some genuinely just want to make sure their kids are behaving. Later in the store, our friend caught up with us and told us everything that happened. The daughter had run up and down the toys aisles. She kept going back and forth from the toys to the cart, throwing in anything that she could get her hands on. She even screamed at the veteran when he put some toys back, which is typical behavior when her normal authority figures aren't watching. When she was satisfied with the toy she did get, she kept asking for candy at the checkout, which is something she asks of pretty much anyone when we go to the store. It was amusing to us that a grizzled military veteran was outmatched by a hyperactive 7-year-old. We have since then been much better off, and we donate money to this event every year, and even toys for any toy drive they have. The veteran still does the event, but he's more understanding when certain children need their parents to go with them. He does get the odd, pushy parent every now and then, but now he handles them, rather than flat out denying all parents from ever going in. Yeah, that's what I like to call someone not knowing what they're getting into. Like seriously, if the parents are literally coming to you and being like, wait a second, we really should be present for when she goes into that store, that's probably a clear sign that yeah, I should probably listen to them and put my pride on the back burner so that I can have something to work with here. Because clearly this girl was like absolutely obnoxious. She was running all over the place, throwing toys in the basket left and right. She was acting like a kid who clearly had ADHD. And I also echo the way the original poster felt. I find it hilarious that this guy thought he could handle this child. So good for you for maliciously complying, because this guy clearly was not gonna get it. And at least now it seems like he's learned a very valuable lesson about letting parents come along if they really request it. My entitled boss constantly screams at their staff anytime they even walk in the building, demanding that they work right away. So I decided to set up a resistance, coordinating with everybody in the office to only show up right when we were supposed to clock in. And I've never felt more satisfied to get back at this boss in a really subtle way. Here's what happened. I used to work in a trade shop run by a great boss everybody got along great with. That is, except for one very specific department head. Let's call them Bumblebee. For reasons that are unrelated to this story, the boss decided to sell the shop to Bumblebee. And in the wake, the majority of the staff quits within months, leaving us completely understaffed. I naively decided to stick it out and assumed that Bumblebee would hire people to fill the empty positions. But guess what? They didn't do that. We go from a 15-person trade shop all the way down to 5 people within a year, and that includes the 6 people who turned over. One of the many issues that developed, and trust me, there were many, was Bumblebee's inability to schedule or think through actions to the end and just plan ahead. While I worked there, which was about 2 years with the original boss, I often came in 10 to 15 minutes early due to the nature of my commute. I'd come in, unload my stuff, make some coffee, small talk with the coworkers, have some small talk with my boss, but we never really started work until everybody's scheduled start time. When Bumblebee took over, the moment you stepped into the shop, they immediately started to bark orders at you, regardless if you were in the building 15 to 20 minutes early. Now at this point, I'm the most senior, and I'm the person left at the shop from the old regime, and when I would point out that we technically were not on the clock yet for another 15 to 20 minutes, and that I want to make some coffee, Bumblebee would just snap at you, telling you to do it now because so-and-so is coming right at opening. So I started to wait in my car, bringing coffee from home, and would only walk in the door as the last minute was changing. I was technically never late to work, and was ready to work the moment I stepped through the door. I don't know if Bumblebee caught on, but the rest of the staff did and followed suit, especially because I told them to. For the remaining months I lasted there, all my coworkers would still often show up early to work, but all would wait in the vehicle, and at some point one of them had a minivan and we all would just party in there, with all of us eventually going in as a group. Anytime a new person joined the staff, because someone always walked off, we would also warn them of what what was happening. Well, it's been several years since I worked there, and I don't know any of the current staff besides Bumblebee. I happened to be doing an on-site install nearby at the time that the shop would be open, and I looked over in the parking lot in front of the shop, and just like clockwork, a minute before the shop was scheduled to open, about 6 people got out of their vehicles and headed in. Now, I may not work there any longer, but it's nice to see that my resistance is still going on. Honestly, this is really the best way to go about doing this. It's bad enough when you have a manager who just sucks at their job and can't even schedule people properly or on time. Like seriously, what's up with that? But you also have a manager who is very clearly a hothead. I mean, they were barking orders at you the second you walked in the door. Like seriously, I came in early to have a cup of coffee and try and gather my thoughts. I didn't step in the building to then start working off the clock. Like seriously, don't try and make people work off the clock. Give people a second to gather their thoughts and try and have some semblance of happiness for their job that day. But you know what? With all things considered, I personally think the way the original poster went about doing this was really smart. They didn't technically break any rules, but they did decide, you know what, we're not going to take this any longer. And so they literally started a resistance to be like, no, we're not going to work until we have to clock in. And honestly, with all things considered, I think that's a great idea, and it's really funny to see that that tradition is still ongoing. My boyfriend's house is absolutely disgusting, and now after visiting and experiencing this disgusting environment, I'm now reconsidering my entire relationship with my boyfriend, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I've been seeing and dating this guy since July, and things have been going really good. It's a long-distance situation, but we've managed to see each other at least once a month. So far, he's been kind and thoughtful, and no major red flags were detected on my end. Well, that is until recently. The first time I flew out to visit him, I decided to stay at an Airbnb since we were getting to know each other, and I wanted my own space. The trip went super well, and I had an amazing time. Last week, I went back and he invited me to stay with him this time. He lives with his brother and dad, but his dad was away, so it made sense and I agreed. When I got to his house, it was late and dark, so I didn't notice much other than a weird smell. They have 3 dogs and live on an island, so I figured that had something to do with it. When I woke up, I started to notice the house was pretty dirty. Things were scattered everywhere, the bathroom had dog hair and dirt, and overall it looked like it hadn't been kept up in quite a while. Now, I tried to look past it since there are 2 guys living there and I kept a positive attitude. Nobody gave me any rundown about the situation or apologized for the mess, but I figured his dad might have a small hoarding problem of some sort. On the second day, I started to notice even more things. The dogs don't get walked, so they go to the bathroom inside the house and in the laundry area that's right by the kitchen. They only get let out to the side yard from time to time, and the dogs have to pass by the bathroom to get to it, which explains why there's so much hair and paw prints and dirt all over the place. I even started feeling uncomfortable showering there because I didn't feel like I was in a clean environment, and I feel terrible for the animals. Then, a really awful smell that almost made me throw up appeared from the laundry area. He mentioned it, and I asked him what he thought it was, and he said it was puke from the dogs, but he couldn't see where it was coming from. The day after, he wanted to invite his friends over to hang out, so I told him he'd have to clean up that smell at the very least before they arrived. He told me that he would if he had the time, and I started to feel even more disgusted than before. Well, he didn't have enough time for the next day, and his brother and him figured it was a great idea to burn cantaloupe incense right before their friends came in just to try and mask the smell. They were hanging out on the table right by the smell the entire time they were there. At this point, I was beyond grossed out. I spoke to him about it, as well as the mess and the lack of urgency to clean up the smell, and he said that staying on top of cleaning with the dogs was an uphill battle, and he had to some degree just given up on even trying to keep things clean. He also told me that he doesn't plan on living like that once he lives on his own and will not be getting any pets. As for the smell, he told me that he didn't think that it was puke and thought it might be some sort of animal or rodent and didn't want to clean it up and find something in front of me, so he brushed it off as much as he could just so he could get to it after I left. I told him I would have rather seen whatever it was and saw that there was at least some initiative on his part to clean it up right then and there, as opposed to letting me think that it's not a priority to live in a clean space. I feel weird because cleanliness is very important to me, and I just can't imagine what I experienced. I do not want, nor could I live like that in the future, and I kind of want to end it, but he is a great guy in all other respects, so now I'm honestly at such such a loss, and I seriously don't know what to do. The way your boyfriend is living is absolutely disgusting. Like, he is letting the dogs go to the bathroom inside the house, he's letting these smells and the awful mess just pile up, and he has no initiative to try and take care of it like right away, or even in like, I don't know, the next hour or so. Like, this guy is super lazy, and trust me when I say this, I am right there with you. How can anybody live that way? That seriously is so disgusting, it's not even funny. And I really think it's wise of you to identify this as a massive red flag. And here's the thing, I don't believe this guy for a second when he's like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna live like this when I have my own place. It's like, buddy, yes you absolutely are. If you're willing to let this slide in this kind of environment, then you're absolutely gonna let that slide in another environment. Claiming you're not gonna do that in a new place, all without any kind of evidence to back that up, in my opinion is just a straight up lie. Like, he couldn't even hire like a cleaning service to do a deep clean all day, like even while he's at work or something like that. I mean, it might be expensive, but good lord, it's better than what they're living in right now. So honestly, I don't blame you for reconsidering this relationship, because this guy lives like an absolute slob, and that in my opinion is absolutely unacceptable. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.